Hey guys, Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. And this is the Fujifilm 10-24mm f4 lens. And I've been utilizing the XH1 and this lens for the past 3 weeks, virtually every day in my real estate work. And after 3 weeks, I'm asking myself what I think is a pretty important question, and that is, do you need a full-frame camera to be successful in real estate photography? Well, let's find out. So first up is the build. Now in full disclosure, this is my first time utilizing both a Fuji camera and a Fuji lens. So I can only compare the build quality of this lens with other lenses from other manufacturers. And there are some nuances that are very specific to Fuji that I might miss. The bulk of this review will focus on the lens's usability and the lens's results. So if I miss anything or something key to Fuji users, let me apologize up front because as I mentioned in an earlier preview, the Fuji interface is very different than virtually every other camera system in the marketplace today. And you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But if you're anything like me and you learn photography in the digital era, the Fuji system will seem a bit complicated at first. Now, I photograph a lot of homes. And after getting over the Fuji interface, I quickly worked the 10-24 and the XH1 into my daily routine, and I've since gotten very used to the camera. Now on to the build. Coming in with a full-frame equivalent field of view of 15 to 36 millimeters, the 10-24 covers a wide range of applications, from real estate, architecture, landscape, and when zoomed out to 24 millimeters or 36 millimeters equivalent, some environmental portraits, though I don't think that is this lens's primary purpose. With the widest aperture of f4, the depth of field is pretty wide, even wide open. So a lens like this is in fact designed to get most, if not all of the shot in focus, making it ideal for the applications that I listed. Coming in at 14.5 ounces or 410 grams, the 10-24 is relatively lightweight for a wide-angle lens. Considering that the barrel and the mount are made out of fairly robust metal, that it's lightweight was actually a very pleasant surprise to me. Much of that is to do with the f4 aperture, because undoubtedly a wider aperture lens would be considerably heavier. However, given that most who use or buy this lens will likely want to render the entire scene in focus, I'm not certain that a widest f4 aperture will make or break a buying decision. On the inside, the 10-24 is made up of a complicated formula of 14 elements arranged in 10 groups. Included in that formula are 4 spherical elements and 3 extra low dispersion elements to help reduce chromatic aberrations throughout the zoom range and to contribute to high overall image sharpness. And HT-EBC multi-layer coating minimizes lens flare and ghosting to deliver contrast-rich, color-neutral imagery. An additional coating has been applied to the reverse side of the front lens element to further contribute to effective ghosting and flare reduction. So says Fuji in their marketing materials. The aperture ranges from f4 to f22, and it's constant throughout the zoom range. Now, speaking of the aperture, there are 7 rounded aperture blades, which makes for okay bokeh rendering, but we generally don't buy wide-angle lenses to be dazzled by their bokeh ability. On the outside, unique to Fuji are 3 different rings on the lens barrel: the focus ring, the zoom ring, and the aperture ring. The focus ring, though relatively thin, moves with the perfect amount of resistance. It is, however, placed very close to the zoom ring, and confusing the two happened to me often in my experience. The zoom ring has a really short throw, but it's really tight and moves with great precision. Next is the aperture ring. It's really thin and moves really easily without any resistance at all. It does click from stop to stop, but I found that often I knocked it out of position and shot the shot at an undesired aperture. Fuji has included optical stabilization with this lens, and it works well in lower light situations, but with an f4 aperture, you really can't get all that slow of a shutter speed handheld, but every little bit helps. The front filter thread is 72 millimeters, and standard screw-on filters do apply. Yay! Fuji also includes a lens hood. It's of okay quality, didn't always stay in place, but it is overall, overall it suits its intended purpose. I understand that Fuji has updated their lens caps, but I really didn't have a problem with this one. Onto the downsides. Well, first, at this price point, which is just under $1,000, I was kind of hoping for some kind of weather sealing, but unfortunately that's not the case. And the aperture ring, to me, is a bit too loose and a bit too sensitive for my taste. It worked, but it was easy to knock from position. That's really about it. So weather sealing aside, the 10-24 is built very solidly, and as such, gets a 9 out of 10. Next up is autofocus speed and accuracy. Now, I've been told by several Fuji fanboys that the autofocus of this particular lens isn't all that great, but honestly, I didn't find that to be the case at all. The 10-24 is outfitted with a stepper motor, which to me was fast, decisive, and wildly accurate, and not to mention completely silent. Now, given that most will be utilizing the 10-24 in a wide-angle capacity, where you're likely going to be taking your time, fast, decisive autofocus is really nice, but it certainly isn't a deal breaker if the lens doesn't have it. But let me just demo the AF speed here really quick. Something really close, boom. Something far away, boom. I mean, I find this to be almost instantaneous and decisive. One other thing to note, given that the minimum focus distance is just under 10 inches, there is in fact some value or potential for this lens to be a bit of a macro lens. But the bottom line is, for AF speed and accuracy, I'm going to give the 10-24 a perfect 10 out of 10. Next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. Now, in my real estate work, I have some pretty demanding clients who require the absolute pinnacle of image quality. And based on my experience, the Fuji X-H1 and the 10-24 deliver. I find the images to be tack sharp at f8, which is where I shoot the bulk of my real estate work. However, even at f4, image quality is way more than acceptable for the bulk of work that I do, both in stills and in video. But like nearly all wide-angle lenses, there is some distortion, and you do need to take a bit of extra care when framing your shots, as you can risk making countertops look like slides. Now, flare is supremely well controlled, and chromatic aberrations, to my eyes, are almost non-existent so far as I can tell. Vignetting, though present at f4, is really not all that relevant to my eyes, and unfortunately, Adobe seems to have forgotten Fuji as a camera and lens manufacturer, because there are very few lens profiles available in Lightroom, including the 10-24. Fortunately, again, vignetting, even at f4, is still not a deal breaker. But that said, don't take my word for it, see for yourself. The next 2 to 3 minutes will be a series of stills and video clips taken with the Fuji X-H1 and the Fuji 10-24, and I can only assure you that even your most discerning clients will absolutely be pleased with the results. Last up is value, and at a $999 list price, the 10-24 is by no means cheap. It is, however, a very well built, very high quality optic at what I believe to be a fair price. Upsides are stellar optics, well-controlled distortion, practically zero chromatic aberration, and very well-controlled flare. On the downside, we don't get any weather sealing, and to my hand, the aperture ring is just a bit too touchy and too sensitive. But overall, to me, the 10-24 represents a fair value for the money, and as such, gets a 9 out of 10 for value. To wrap up this review, we give the Fujifilm 10-24 f4 lens a 47.5 out of 50 and our highly recommended rating. The final word: if you happen to be a real estate, architecture, landscape photographer, or videographer, then the Fujifilm 10-24 f4 lens is more than up to the task to handle just about any situation you could throw at it, unless it happens to be raining. But all in, at $999, the Fujifilm delivers excellent results at a fair price. Yes, it's an APS-C lens on an APS-C camera body, but honestly, there really aren't a whole lot of compromises here optically, and I think you'd be really hard-pressed to tell the difference, especially at f8, between this camera and this lens and my full-frame D750 and my Nikon 14-24. Overall, I'm impressed, and I feel the 10-24 is more than worthy of professional real estate photographers and videographers. Now, invariably, after watching this video, people are going to ask me if I'm going to make a switch to Fuji. And the simple answer is probably not, though I wouldn't rule out purchasing an X-T3 or an X-H1 in my future. Now that said, I always say virtually every camera body produced today is capable of producing an excellent result, so long as the camera is in the right hands. Now, if I were just starting out in real estate photography, then I would absolutely consider the Fuji X-H1 and the Fuji 10-24. That said, however, if I was already a well-established photographer and if I was already invested in a camera system, then I'm not so sure I'd feel compelled to make a switch to Fuji. Now, that's just my opinion. And lucky for us, I feel like we are in the glory days of camera and lens manufacturer, because just about any camera and any lens produced today can give you the desired results. I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. If you like videos like this, please give me a like, or better yet, subscribe. And until the next time, happy shooting.